I'm David Guinness. I'm actually an old Etonian, but in 1972 I was a shop steward on the assembly line at Ford's Dagenham. So I know a little bit about, well, in my vocabulary, how the other half lived. Now, I'm basically an engineer, and I worked on the space program in 1968. I went to business school at MIT, which was a quite amazing place. We graded the teachers. And I got interested in cooperatives. And someone said, I think it was the sociology professor. He said, well, if you're interested in cooperatives, go to Yugoslavia. Well, I found out a bit more about Yugoslavia, and I thought, this is the way things should be.
So what year was your visit, and what was Yugoslavia like?
Well, I learned a few words of Serbo-Croat, and I touched down in Yugoslavia in 1969, and I spent a month there. And it was a quite extraordinary place. One of the first things that struck me was that there were no licensing laws for alcohol at all. People could brew their own slivovitz on their farm, and you could get a drink at a kafana at 3 o'clock in the morning. There was that. Now the rest of it I'd heard about in America. Basically, that Tito was a dictator, and yet, underneath him, Yugoslav citizens lived in an environment of unparalleled freedom.
Well, when you say freedom, what do you mean? There's lots of different ways that word is used, David, isn't there?
Well, freedom at work. It's quite true to say that in Tito's Yugoslavia, the workers could sack their boss. What used to happen was you could employ up to 7 people. In a larger enterprise, it was run by an elected workers' council, who in turn appointed the director. And if the director turned out to be unsatisfactory, or the workers' council didn't like him, they could sack him and appoint someone else. So it was genuine industrial democracy. We've heard industrial democracy mean all sorts of things. This was the real thing that happened.
So how did that manifest itself in the way that ordinary Yugoslavs lived their life? I mean, you can contrast that kind of thing to, a sort of British version or US or German versions of the way industries work.
Well, I met someone who was a Yugoslav, and he said to me this. He said, you can enter Yugoslavia by 7 different countries. Now, I'm not going to remember them all, but there was Greece, there was Italy, there was Albania, there was Romania, and 3 others. But, he said, people stand straighter in Yugoslavia. Now, to me, that spoke volumes. And there was a sense there that, when I went there, I had 2 questions. One was, did the system work? And secondly, did the people like it? Well, work it half did. In 1950, Yugoslavia was a largely peasant population. By the time Tito died, they were making their own cars under license from Fiat and building their own ships under Split. So the system obviously worked.
So when did Tito die, and what led to the breakup of Yugoslavia? Was it just Tito's death?
What happened was...
Can you just start with the year he died?
Yes, 1980. Tito didn't believe in his own death, somehow. So he made no arrangement for his succession at all. So you had the different republics of Yugoslavia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Montenegro. They all wanted to be the boss of Yugoslavia, and that led to a civil war. Now, I suspect at that point that the CIA was involved. If you have a country that's consisting of republics that basically hate each other, it's pretty easy to destabilize it. You just shoot someone and blame it on someone else, and then there's a civil war. Well, that's what happened. And that was the end of, Tito's Yugoslavia. Although, still to this day, you'll see some people having a photograph of Tito up in their shop and saying Tito dobro organizacije. Tito had a good organization. So that was basically what happened. Now, all of that, the breakup was public. We all saw it on our television screens, and that's what Yugoslavia gets remembered for. And Tito's Yugoslavia, what happened there, the really good things that happened, you see, it was neither capitalism or Soviet communism. It was something quite new, and it was called worker self-management. And, it was Yugoslav socialism, really.
To what extent is there still some sort of socialism left in that part of the world? Does it still exist?
Very little, as far as I gather. It was, actually, there's evidence that I read that it was systematically wiped out by NATO. That there was precision bombing took place, and the self-managed enterprises, including the Zastava car factory, were bombed, but the new private enterprises were left untouched.
What about your vision of the future of Europe and Yugoslavia particularly? Do you think that there's any real hope that we'll regain some of these happier industries? Because nowadays, a lot of trade unionists across Europe are targeted still. People who try to do organisation within workers often find themselves without a job. We've had a big scandal in Britain over the last couple of years, another one to do with blacklisting, for example, and this surely doesn't foster good industrial relations where trade unionists are being secretly targeted and may lose their job for life.
Yes. Well, what is not very well known is that there are something like 500 businesses in this country that operate on Yugoslav-type systems. There's the two big ones are Essential Trading and Suma Foods. They both have articulated lorries to deliver their produce and employ over 100 people. Now, the problem in this country is that these businesses, these 500 businesses, they operate under a very complicated legal system. Now, France Germany, Italy, Spain, and many others have their own legal system for framework in which a cooperative business, as it's called, well, it's some call it workers' control, but I call it a self-managed enterprise, can exist. It has limited liability and this sort of thing. In the UK, we have nothing at all. And what is urgently needed, if businesses like this are to foster, is a body of legislation passed by Parliament so that there will be a proper cooperative, worker cooperative branch of company law.